My name is Nancy Roberts, and I'm an economics professor at Arizona State University. Today's topic is an area of economics that's relatively new. It's called public choice economics, and what it does is study the behavior of voters, politicians, bureaucrats. It looks at what we call collective decision making. We've just finished a discussion of public goods, and what we know about public goods is that they're collectively consumed. So a lighthouse is collectively consumed. National defense is collectively consumed. So the question is, we know how we make decisions about private goods. Do you want to buy this pen? This pen costs $1. It's a private decision. You pay the dollar, you don't pay the dollar. You get the pen, you don't get the pen. But when we talk about goods that are collectively consumed, they're not individual decisions, they're collective decisions. And so in the 60s, the 70s, economics started looking at these collective decisions, we call them non-market decisions, and applied economic theory to these collective decisions. And in fact, there's a couple of Nobel Prize winners who have, economists, who have focused on this particular issue. One of them is named Kenneth Arrow. He won the Nobel Prize in the 70s, and he talks about the perfect voting rule. What's the best decision-making rule? Should we use unanimity? In other words, we're not going to have something collective unless it's a unanimous decision. That's one rule we could use. Another one could be we have a dictator and he just decides. Another one would be plurality. So we could say, okay, we have these choices, whichever one gets the most votes, that's going to be the decision. Or we could use majority rule, which is what we most often use. Majority rule would be n over 2 plus 1, where n is the number of voters. So this would be 51%. That's majority rule. And majority rule basically relies on what we call the median voter theory. And Kenneth Arrow, who won the Nobel Prize, showed us that in fact there's absolutely no perfect voting rule, that they all have problems. And so the first thing I want to do is look at the median voter rule and do a little example of how it works. And then I'm going to show in another video, I'll show some problems with majority rule and the median voter theorem. And then finally in a third video, I want to discuss how decisions are made using vote trading. So these are the next 3 videos that we're going to look at. So right now I'm going to explain the median voter theorem. And I'm going to draw sort of a bell curve. Okay, so if we have voter preferences spread out on this continuum from some people who are very, let's just call this liberal, and let's call this conservative. And we have voters all along this spectrum. And if we have 2 candidates who want to be elected by these voters, then the median voter theorem tells us that the candidate whose views are most aligned with the median will be elected. And it has some really interesting implications for our elections, which in fact are going on right now in 2016. So I'm going to identify my 2 candidates. I'm going to identify this one, and I'm going to call him M because he's the median. So these are his views. This is the way he sees things, kind of right in the middle. Some things that way, some things this way. So, and here's candidate L, and his views are more closely aligned to all of these people. And so when we think about which votes these candidates are going to get, candidate L is going to get all of these votes. And he's actually going to get some of these votes in here too. When we look at candidate M, he's going to get all of these votes and some of these votes in here, so the median candidate is going to win because he's going to get more votes. And in fact, this helps explain why. I'm going to put another candidate here, and I'm going to call him candidate C. This explains why in the primaries, where candidate C is trying to get the nomination from the Conservative Party, his positions, as he explains them, are out here. When candidate L is trying to win the nomination from the Liberal Party, his positions are explained as being out here. Once they secure the nomination of their party, what we find is always, when they start explaining their views to the general public and trying to get their votes, both of these candidates move to the middle because they know this is where the votes are. So this is called the median voter theorem. And what I want to do is just do a quick example of how the median candidate wins. And in fact, it helps explain why, in general, a two-party system is relatively stable. When we look at political systems around the world, those that are two-party systems are relatively stable. Okay, so let's look at a situation where I have three people, Larry, Curly, and Moe. And Larry, Curly, and Moe are going to go to lunch. They've agreed they're going to lunch together. They haven't decided where they're going to go. And Larry wants to go somewhere cheap. He wants a $5 lunch. Curly says, you know, we're having lunch together. Let's spend $10. Let's go somewhere where this is the average price. Moe says, $20. I want to go somewhere where we have a really nice lunch. We don't get together that often. And so what happens is, if we take a vote, and it doesn't matter how you arrange these votes, if we take a vote between, so we'll call this low, we'll call this median, and we'll call this high-cost lunches. Low-cost lunch, median-cost lunch, high-cost lunch. If we take a vote among these three people and we say, should we have low or median lunch? Should we go to a low-cost place or a median-cost place? And if we take all three votes, Larry will vote for low, but Curly and Moe will vote for median, because even Moe prefers median to low. So median's going to win that vote. If we say, shall we do median or high? Well, Moe's going to vote for high, but Curly and Larry are both going to vote for median. So it doesn't matter how you pairwise these votes, median's always going to win. This is why we call it the median voter theorem. So this is sort of an explanation of the median voter theorem. However, Kenneth Arrow, who won the Nobel Prize, said we're using majority rule, and we see the median voter and he's going to win. But the problem is there are conditions where this doesn't work. We end up with just cycling. We don't have a decision. And so in the next video, I'm going to explain how we can vote when we have more than one choice and we're using majority rule and we don't end up with a solution. We don't end up with a median voter. So we'll look at that next.